What is it about this gun that is so meme-worthy? Its looks for sure are one factor, but also it just makes no sense as a weapon in Warframe, right? In Warframe, weapons generally build toward either status chance or crit damage, or sometimes a little bit of both. But the Stug here has neither of those things, especially mine, which, with the Riven equipped, actually has negative critical chance. As such, it is rarely seen in use, and when it is seen, it lacks so much damage in comparison to other secondary weapons that it's just not worth using. Unfortunately, the usage statistics for 2023 haven't yet come out at the time of recording, but going off of 2022 stats, the Stug only had a 0.21% usage. And if you look at that usage statistic a bit more closely, you'll notice that the vast majority of people using it are MR0. Clearly, after using it, it didn't come across as a weapon people wanted to continue using. So why, oh why, oh why is this blob gun such an unpopular weapon in Warframe? Well, first of all, let's talk about how the Stug actually works. The Stug fires blob, or gel-like projectiles that can impact enemies and solid surfaces. The initial impact of the weapon deals a very low amount of damage and also triggers an immediate radial attack that has fall-off, but the radius of this can be increased using fulmination or primed fulmination. This first radial trigger is what is outlined in the weapon's damage stats. However, after roughly 2 seconds, the fired blobs will detonate, dealing a much greater amount of damage than the previous stage. Blobs can also stack up into one another until reaching a maximum of 10, at which point the main blob will explode. Uniquely, the explosion does not cause any knockback. The Stug also has a secondary fire that fires the equivalent of 6 blobs at once in one large blob. Alright, so that's the basics. Now let's take a look at the stats. As we were saying earlier, the Stug does not boast any kind of useful stats on face value. It has a 5% crit chance with only a 1.5 times crit multiplier, so right off the bat, we're not even going to bother with that, and it also looks as though it has no status chance whatsoever. Whilst this is true for the initial hit and the radial attack, the explosion that follows does in fact have an innate 10% status chance, so that's at least something, although still relatively low. So really, all that we've got to look at is pure damage. The Stug is somewhat unique in that it deals pure corrosive damage, giving it a higher damage against ferrite armor types, something quite common with the Grineer faction. Having a second tier element as its base damage type also allows us to apply another second tier element that utilises either electric or toxin as a base. This is actually surprisingly helpful, as it allows us to get corrosive, viral, and also radiation onto one weapon. Those 3 damage types cover every single Grineer unit's weaknesses: corrosive for the ferrite armor of basic units, radiation for alloy armor carried by units like the bombards, and finally viral damage which affects Grineer flesh across the board. Alright, so maybe I'm clutching at straws here, but at least it has something going for it, right? So with that in mind, how can we actually get the damage of this thing up? So, I spent a bit of time gathering together a build for this, and although my Riven mod is really nowhere near where I would want it, I'm not going to waste any more time farming Kuva to roll a Riven for a weapon which, let's face it, I'm probably never going to use past this video. That being said, I do actually quite like having the increased projectile speed on this thing, as it does speed gameplay up a bit, otherwise this weapon can end up feeling very sluggish indeed. You can see here that we have our 3 elements on: corrosive, radiation, and viral, so for our testing we are going to be going up against Grineer. I haven't bothered with any status chance mods at this stage because I just don't think they're going to help us all that much, to be honest, and I'm definitely not going to be using any critical chance mods because, well, my Riven has already ruined any chance we might have of getting a crit build. So let's see how this pans out. Now, as this is an AoE weapon, it is going to help to utilise something that can group enemies together, for instance, Korra's Ensnare. This is going to reduce the damage fall off on surrounding targets pretty significantly, so if you are really desperate to use this weapon, I would suggest that you don't just use it standalone. Get yourself a weapons platform frame or something that can group targets together, and your experience will be significantly improved. So first of all, we'll try this against some normal Grineer units. Let's put them at level 100, which is about what you'd see in final sortie missions, for example. Alright, so that wasn't too bad. Let's up their level now to the maximum and see what happens. Okay, and now finally, let's see what happens if we stick that on Steel Path. Right, yeah, that's not going to cut it, I don't think. So that's the Stug, guys. It's one of the oldest weapons in the game. Surprisingly, it has never seen any love in its entire lifespan, as far as I can remember. At this point, it's probably just there as a meme. In fact, it even suffered nerfs during DE's AoE weapon purge, so it's arguably got worse because of that. The key problem with this weapon isn't that it has insanely low damage, it's just its slow pace. Warframe is a really fast-paced game, and the Stug just does not exist to fill the requirements of a fast-paced game. But I don't know. Let me know what you think down below of the blob gun, and also what do you think could be done to improve it. Personally, I'm quite surprised that it hasn't been released as a Kuva variant yet. I think a Kuva variant of this weapon could have some quite fun and unique interactions. Like, first of all, the blobs could explode on impact, or they could be detonated manually in some way, or maybe homing blobs. Plus, give it some crit chance or something. It's just so sad otherwise, especially compared to some of the other weapons we have in the game. But anyway, that's enough about the blob gun. If you guys did enjoy the video, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.